This is how the Pakistan elections looked like just a week ago.
The election results in Pakistan are trickling in and they seem to be building up to a pretty spectacular climax of sorts. The results so far show the jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf backed independent candidates to be leading in the seats tally.
But then, this happened.
Pakistan's election has ended with no party winning a majority in parliament. Polls were marred by militant violence, political turmoil, and questions of transparency.
And then again, this.
Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif-led PMLN and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's PPP have joined hands to form the government.
So just when there was some kind of clarity emerging, came the latest twist.
Rawalpindi's Commissioner Liaquat Ali Chhat, who is now being arrested after he resigned and admitted failure in conducting free and fair elections.
First things first, of course, the Pakistan Supreme Court is hearing a petition that's seeking to declare the general elections null and void.
Now, all this has come at a time when protests are taking place across Pakistan over allegations of election rigging. Now, thousands of supporters of the Grand Democratic Alliance, the GDA, have hit the streets in southern Sindh province.
Pakistan's general elections are a mess. The people's mandate against the current regime, followed by widespread rigging of votes and an overnight overturning of results. A hung parliament, a split mandate, and an imminent weak coalition between two rival parties. A former cricket idol turned political disruptor, wildly popular but in prison. His political party stripped off its symbol, but holding sway in many critical areas in the country. And all of this in the middle of an ongoing economic crisis and raging political unrest. And as they used to say in the opening credits of 70s Bollywood movies, above all, the master puppeteer, the establishment, the military deep state. It's a mess, it's a crisis, it's a travesty. What lies ahead for democracy in Pakistan, and what will the country's new government and its ways mean for its neighbour, India? All this and more in today's episode. It's Tuesday, the 20th of February. I'm your host Anirban Chaudhary. This is the Morning Brief. Pakistan's elections have been problematic for years. In fact, they've mostly been a very poor representation of the people's will. In 7 of 12 general elections held in the last 53 years, the voter turnout was less than 45%. Pakistan's political history has been volatile and problematic too. 3 constitutions, 3 military coups, and not a single prime minister who was able to complete their 5-year term. The first allegation of rigging of votes in Pakistan's election history in fact dates back to as early as 1977. Then in the 90s, the regimes were marked by allegations of corruption and nepotism against the Bhutto family. Chroniclers say that it was after 2001, when General Pervez Musharraf declared himself president, that political power in the country became inextricable from military power. It was the military that Nawaz Sharif accused of ousting him through a judicial coup when he was embroiled in the Panama Papers scam in 2017. In 2018, the military propped up a new leader, former cricket legend Imran Khan and his party Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. But just 3 years after taking over as Prime Minister, Khan too lost favour with the army. He was ousted in 2022 through a no-confidence motion and jailed in 2023 on charges of corruption and treason. Khan's ouster and later his arrest led to widespread protests in the country. Khan and his party asked for early elections. By then, Nawaz Sharif's Pakistan Muslim League N had formed a caretaker government with Shehbaz Sharif as Prime Minister. 3 months after Khan's arrest in May, the parliament was to complete its 5-year tenure. Elections would have happened anyway, But Sharif and his party did not want that. So, in August, they had the parliament dissolved. Meanwhile, Pakistan continued to grapple with an economic crisis, high inflation and fiscal debt, and its currency and foreign reserves falling to alarming lows. When the elections finally happened on February 8th, they yielded a hung parliament. None of the countries, including PMLN or Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's Pakistan People's Party, had the numbers to form a government. Interestingly, independent candidates affiliated to the PTI had cornered a large number of votes, but they had to be part of a political party or coalition to form a government. Earlier this week, PMLN said it would form the government with its rival PPP's support. But then, the skeletons began to tumble out of the closet, primarily in the form of a confession from the Commissioner of Rawalpindi.
कि मैंने आज सुबह की नमाज के बाद एक दफा मैंने खुदकुशी करने की कोशिश की है, लेकिन फिर मैंने सोचा कि मैंने क्यों ना ये सारी चीजें अवाम के पास रखूं, मैं खुद क्यों हराम की मौत मरूं और मैं ये सारी चीजें अवाम के सामने क्यों ना रखूं। तो यहाँ पे हुआ है कि जो लोग आजाद उम्मीदवार 70-80 हज़ार की लीड से जीत रहे थे, हमने उनको हरवाया है और उनके ऊपर जाली मोहरे लगा के सबको हरवाया।
कमिश्नर साहब, जाली मोहरे लग रही थी, उस वक्त आपने किसी से कहा कि ये सब कुछ हो रहा है, गलत हो रहा है, इसको रोका जाए?
देखिए, मैं ये सारी इस गलतकारी की जिम्मेदारी अपने ऊपर ले रहा हूँ और साथ आपको बता रहा हूँ कि जो चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर है, जो चीफ जस्टिस है, वो भी इस काम में पूरे शरीक हैं।
तो किसके कहने पे सब कुछ होता है?
Here's Tilak Deveshar, member of the National Security Advisory Board and the author of 4 books on Pakistan.
Now, the last 2018 election, before the 24 elections, were considered to be the most rigged. To get Imran Khan into power, they had to do many, many things which hadn't been tried out in the past. Now, this election, I think, has gone a step beyond. And the kind of things the army has done to deny the popular vote to the candidates of Imran Khan, I think goes to the next level.
I asked Mr. Deveshar, amidst all this, even if a government is formed, will it last?
You see, it will last as long as the army wants it to last. As it is, combination of the PPP and the PMLN, with both parties trying to outdo the other for the future, it's not a very complementary kind of a coalition. And both, I think the PMLN has got about 70 plus and the PPP has got about 50 plus. So the margin between them is not very much, right? So they will stay together because the alternative of Imran Khan coming back would be curtains for both of them. And also for the army. Also for the army chief especially. So the army will keep the coalition together for as long as they can. I think the army will give them at least a year and a half to 2 years to try and get the economy back on rails. Thereafter, I think it's anybody's guess.
Let's look at the key players. First, the oldest incumbent, Nawaz Sharif.
और मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, वो मोमेंटम जो हमने बनाया था 1990 में, जब मैं पहली दफा वज़ीर-ए-आज़म बना था, अगर वो मोमेंटम कायम रहता, आज पाकिस्तान दुनिया की बहुत बड़ी ताकत होती, बहुत बड़ी ताकत होती.
Nawaz Sharif has been around for a long time. He first started off by being the finance minister of Punjab way back in 1981. And he's been prime minister 3 times and he has been removed from power 3 times. So he has something to prove. This is going to be he's 74, I think. So for him, this term was supposed to be a legacy term. But he would have become prime minister if the PMLN had won a majority on its own. But because it hasn't, it has to go into a coalition. So his brother Shehbaz Sharif is a better manager of coalitions. Shehbaz Sharif also gets along well with the army. Shehbaz Sharif will become prime minister, but Nawaz Sharif's daughter, Maryam Nawaz, is slated to be chief minister of Punjab, which is the province that really matters in Pakistan. So they're going to spread it out in the family.
What about his partner, Benazir Bhutto's son Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, who had joined politics to sort of avenge his mother's assassination? Indeed, when appointed as the chairman of the PPP, he had quoted his mother to say, "Democracy is the best form of revenge." His father Asif Ali Zardari is PPP's president. Bilawal is Pakistan's youngest ever foreign minister.
I'm quite optimistic about the election results this time, that they will surely be better than the 2018 elections. We've been campaigning extensively around the country, and the response that the Pakistan People's Party has received from all 4 provinces has been beyond our expectations.
So Bilawal Bhutto initially was not keen to join the government, but I think there were pressures, and Zardari was keen. So I think now the deal is that they will either support the PMLN from outside, sit in the treasury benches but not take up office. But that could also be a bargaining tactic, because Asif Zardari is keen to become president. And the way he can become president is that PMLN will say, fine, let the PPP also join the government and take responsibility for whatever collective actions are taken. The PPP also wants a bargaining for either the chairman of the Senate or the Speaker of the National Assembly and a government in Balochistan. They already have a majority in Sindh. So this hard bargaining is going on at the moment between these 2 main parties. There is also the MQM, which has won about 17 seats from Karachi. There is the JUI, and there is a small party from Balochistan. So right now it's a bit of a tangle, and the strand will become clear, I think, over the next week or 10 days.
And what about Imran Khan? Arguably the biggest disruptor of Pakistani politics in the last decade, the man who actually took on the Pakistani army.
There is no rule of law here. It is a complete law of the jungle. Might is right. You can be picked up. One man in this country decides whatever, and that happens. It's one man, the army chief. There's no democracy in the army.
The thing about Imran Khan is that he's not a Democrat. So when he was removed, whether through a vote of no confidence, which is a democratic instrument that the opposition uses, he could not accept his defeat. And since then, he's been trying various methods to try and come back into power in the previous assembly or to force elections and in the new assembly. So that's one thing to remember about him. Second, he has got this massive mandate of votes without the symbol, without the party, not because of his performance. His performance in the 3 years that he was Prime Minister was dismal. And if if the PDM at that time had, instead of taking power, if they had held elections, Imran Khan would have been wiped out, because his economic policies especially were pretty bad, were pretty disastrous for the country. But, power has its own dynamics, and the PDM decided to sort of take power, and then they had to implement a whole lot of unpleasant decisions, rise of inflation and all those kinds of things happen. So yes, the last 2 years, if there's a single point or a single person that has disrupted the politics, that has increased polarization in the country and taken on the army, tried to mess around with the army chain of command, has been Imran Khan. The politics of Pakistan for the last 2 years have revolved around this one man.
And what do you think happens to his story?
I don't see him leaving the country. He's in jail right now. He's a pretty long 3 sentences, pretty long, 10 years, 12 years and 7 years. So I see him being in jail for quite a while. But his party, or the people who have contested as PTI, but without the symbol of the PTI, will continue to matter in the National Assembly, in the Provincial Assembly of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and in Punjab. So while he may be in jail, I won't say the PTI is fallen by the wayside.
But without a leader, will it just be an effective opposition, you think? Or
so, what he's doing is that lawyers who go to see him, or his sister who goes to see him, he passes on messages through them. And because they have a very sophisticated social media campaign, so whatever he wants to say, they are using AI and his past speeches to create that message relevant today through AI, and people feel that he's actually speaking from his residence.
Who forms the Pakistani government and how will have a significant impact on the country's relationship with India. Not just in the bilateral sense, but also vis-a-vis Pakistan's relations with China and the US. Remember that neither the US nor China are happy with Pakistan. Also, Afghanistan, with whom it shares porous, tenuous, sensitive, volatile borders, will be very critical. Here's my colleague, ET's political editor, Pranab Dhal Samanta.
The point is that Nawaz Sharif historically has been in favor of developing stronger economic ties with India. He also wanted to start out on a good wicket with Narendra Modi in 2014.
Oh yeah, this is when he attended PM Modi's swearing-in ceremony.
To announce the arrival of His Excellency Mian Mohammad Nawaz Sharif, the Honorable Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
पाकिस्तान के प्रधानमंत्री नवाज शरीफ ने कल अपनी नातिन की शादी की रिसेप्शन पार्टी में पीएम मोदी का दिया हुआ गिफ्ट पहना.
So yes, he may look for stronger economic ties with India, and given the fact that India is now one of the better economic stories in the world, I think that will be the direction which they'll go. On this, the PPP will also support them. So the question, however, will be at our end as to the degree of engagement we would want to keep, given Pakistan's own economic dependence on China. So China complicates matters for us. But from an Indian perspective, there will be a reach out on the economic front. That's point number one. Point number two, however, is that each time there has been some kind of cooperation between India and Pakistan on non-military fields or economic and social fields, we've always been surprised by the Pakistan military and the deep state in Rawalpindi by way of terror or by way of some audacious attack, be it Kargil or 26/11. So often talks and cooperation don't go hand in hand in Pakistan somehow. So you have to be careful to the extent to which India can deal with the civilian government. And I don't think beyond a point the Pakistan military will allow the civilian government to run off with the agenda, which Nawaz wants to do, has always historically wanted to do, keep a control on the India relationship. With a fractured mandate and a coalition government, his ability to execute that may be limited.
Let's talk a little bit more on the ongoing political unrest in Pakistan, especially some really sensitive areas like the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region, where PTI independence seem to have some sort of a sway, and it's bordering Afghanistan. So in a situation where PTI, of course, doesn't form the government, would it mean sort of an ungoverned KP area, and wouldn't that mean severe security concerns for India?
See, anything which happens in that part of Pakistan's geography does tend to impact India because the military or the deep state in Pakistan looks to transfer those problems on the Kashmir side. That's what it has done historically. But now there is a problem with the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. The Pakistan-Afghanistan relationship is not a healthy point. There are factions of Taliban with them and there are factions of Taliban against them. It's riddled with terror groups and camps and all kinds of porous border issues which come with such a situation. In that mix, you have a state government which is not exactly doing your or is not being propped up by you. It creates its own complications on the ground. And remember, there will be every now and then American interests which the Pakistan army will have to take care of in that region, which has its own blowback on the ground. And PTI this time has come to power with an anti-America sort of one of the big things, an anti-America plank. And the Pakistan military will always want to do America's bidding in that part of. So it's going to be very complicated. And anything which happens there has ramifications for India.
Pranab, let's talk about another neighbor now, and a very critical one at that, China. So China has always been an ally and a very staunch one at that. But it's recently been fairly unhappy, not so much with Pakistan as with Imran Khan. And I think the anger obviously aggravated when Khan accused corruption in the transactions around the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. So how do you see that story progressing now?
Pakistan is very important to China, even though it is sort of rolling back on some of its BRI commitments. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is something I think the Chinese will continue to invest on to quite an extent. despite the slowdown in China. The problem for the Chinese is essentially security of their investments, their personnel on ground. The Chinese have started to become targets of terror groups and other public protests in Baluchistan and areas through which the CPEC goes. So what the first question to the government which comes to power will be to ensure the security of Chinese investments and collaborate with the army, because the military will listen to China, collaborate with the military to ensure this works out fine. Second, terms and conditions, don't contracts and agreements should sail through and not be questioned needlessly. And remember, Pakistan's economic situation is not great, and it has been asking for money from IMF, etc. Unlike, say, Sri Lanka or many other countries where the Chinese have been dragging their feet at the IMF to support bailout packages, in case of Pakistan, they go the full distance and support any kind of bailout package. So the Chinese will continue to do that and hope the civilian government, as long as the civilian government does their bidding. If the civilian government sort of starts questioning contracts and terms and conditions of Chinese debt to Pakistan and what kind of debt dependency which is being created thereof, that would be problematic for China. So, yes, the expectation from the civilian government would basically be fall in line.
So, how will the changing dynamics of Pakistan's relationship with Afghanistan, China, and the US be beneficial or harmful for India? Also, India seems to be firmer than ever before on Kashmir. How do you see that too panning out?
We have revoked Article 370 from Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan has opposed that, including Imran Khan or whosoever, gone around in different fora trying to garner support against India. It has not succeeded. India would want any regime in Pakistan at some point to accept this. That would be the starting point of any conversation between India and Pakistan. You cannot have a conversation as far as this government, India, is concerned, if you are going to come to the table with the precondition of, discussing 370, which is something India will not want to discuss with Pakistan. So that's a hump which the Pakistan military and the Pakistan civilian government will have to cross. The Americans will nudge them, but to the extent they'll be able to do this is a big question mark. Remember, on this, they will also look at China, which has its own views on this issue. That's a very fundamental problem. Other than that, the security concerns which arise out of these situations, whether it or the fallout from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or terror installations in POK constantly looking to infiltrate into J&K. And third, of course, is the economic crisis which Pakistan is going through. If it gets worse, this has been a debate in the strategic community. Is a Pakistan which is stable better for India, even though it is ruled by the generals in Rawalpindi, or a Pakistan in chaos, where the army's control loosens and there are large swaths of area which are sort of in a state of ungoverned territory. Now, that's something one has to watch out for.
The world is looking at the regression of democracy in Pakistan with an increasingly critical eye. According to the Economist Democracy Index for 2023, Pakistan suffered the biggest regression in the region in a list of 28 countries. Its status was downgraded from a hybrid regime to an authoritarian one. Here's Joan Hoy, editor of the Democracy Index.
Pakistan had been classified as a hybrid regime. In 2022, it had a score of 4.13, so that put it in this category of hybrid regimes. These are countries that have some elements of democracy, usually related to the electoral system, having some kind of a democratic election process. So what happened in 2023 was that Pakistan's score on several indicators deteriorated, and its overall score declined to 3.25 on this 0 to 10 scale. So that was quite a big decline, and the country fell 11 places in the rankings, and Pakistan is now ranked in 118th position. That's out of the 167 countries.
What the report also said is that in countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan and Russia, elections will not bring democracy. I asked Joan if that's how the world looks at Pakistan now.
Yeah, I'm not sure we should be so categorical as that's to say never or not. I think that the point that was being made there was that in this huge election year of 2024, the biggest ever election year, when countries are home to more than half the population of the world are going to the polls. So we've already seen some very large elections, as you mentioned, Bangladesh, Indonesia, we have India, we have Pakistan, Russia, the US, and so on. So these are very, very big elections. And the point that was really being made was that in those countries that are classified as authoritarian regimes or hybrid regimes, where the electoral system is neither free nor fair, and many other attributes of democracy are not present. So there's no freedom of expression. There isn't a level playing field. Parties, opposition parties are persecuted or intimidated or not allowed to run effectively in the election. Then, unfortunately, the possibility of bringing about change through democratic means and through elections is very highly circumscribed. I guess overall as well that people in Pakistan have not given up on democracy, and the problem lies with the political class and the major, political dynasties that have been influential in the country, and obviously with the army as well. That's where the problem resides, in their failure to put in place a political system that can deliver for the people of Pakistan and deliver more democracy and also better economic management of the country.
About 60 million citizens of Pakistan turned out to vote this year. In absolute terms, this number was higher than the voter turnout in 2018. But as a percentage of the total number of registered voters, it fell from 52.1% to 47%. This is because 23 million new voters were registered in the country between 2018 to 2023. But here's more. Many more women turned out to vote this year. The overall gender gap on the voter rolls between male and female voters reduced from 12.4 million in 2018 to 9.9 million in 2023. Now, with the confessions of rigged voting coming out, some of these numbers may just be out of whack. But the trends show that while people's participation in the electoral process remains low, there is a massive entry of young and female voters in the mix. And the recent revelations show that many of them were voting for change, many more than what the official figures say. Not for Imran Khan, not for his party or its independence, but against the status quo. Will these new young voters make any kind of dent before democracy dies a slow death in Pakistan? On that note, this is your host Anirban Chaudhary signing off. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by Vinay Joshi and sound designed by Amrit Riji. Do like, share and subscribe if our episodes make you aware and curious about the most important stories of the day. If they don't, subscribe anyway and tell us in the comments how we can do better. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Keep listening. Have a good week. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.